attorney Clint Paris in Texas News Radio, reality radio where everybody can be a star. I want to welcome you to today's edition of Straight Up the Middle. I am joined by my co-host, none other than the world-renowned Sweet Pete Edwards. Good morning, Pete. How you doing this morning? Outstanding. Hey Pete, you know what? If you want to talk about that now to make sure we get it covered, you can do it now. We can come off the break. Which one would you like to do? Okay, and Pete, your audio is a little bit low this morning. Can they turn you up a little bit? Okay, that's a little better. Go ahead. Okay. Mm.
I saw four cases this week, Clint. Three on the east side of town, one on the South Tampa. Young mothers or nieces or whatever smoking with babies under 2 years old in their lap behind the steering column. No seat belt, no car seat. I saw two of the cases, they had car seats, but the little ones not in there trying to show them the window. We cannot have that. So I'm making an appeal to the black women, the powerful black women, the up and coming ones. If you're going to represent us, step your game up and stop trying to be so hip or internet hip or IG hip or whatever you're doing. Put the babies in the proper car seat. Now, we had one case of a grandmother that had a baby behind the steering wheel and she went off the road off of I-4 somewhere. But this trend that's going on now that's supposed to be hip, even in drive-through lanes, the baby's unseated behind the steering wheel, just standing up in the middle or whatever, and somebody can come through the drive-through and hit them from the rear. And then the first thing our community would say, well, the police just hassle with them. We cannot have babies. And I'm talking about look like some of them 6 months old, 9 months old. I'm saying, what the hell is that? So I'm asking all of us, if you see that, say something about it. Grandparents, don't tolerate that. If they want your money, if they want you to babysit and all, then you got to teach them, look, I want my grandchildren in the proper car seats. It makes no sense. It's dangerous. And now, if you want to smoke your herb, burn your trees, smoke marijuana, whatever the case may be, okay, fine. That's your choice to make. But when you got babies and you blowing smoke while you driving and you got them behind a steering wheel, there's nothing hip about that. So I just leave it at that because I'm telling you, as a brother, as a real hood brother, I wouldn't tolerate that. I mean, we cannot do that. We don't care if the young ladies or babies come Angela Davis, Malcolm X's, the fourth, or whatever the case may be. But if we don't properly keep them to be safe in an environment, speeding down the road, smoking herb, showing your baby, holding the head out the window, what kind of junk is that? I'm just saying. Now, some people are going to say, well, that's another old thing from a conservative brother. But you know what? I love my community, and we can't have that. That's all I'm going to say on that issue.
Well, Pete, you bring up a very, very key topic, and that is, child safety. And of course, if the mother is not leading the charge for keeping the child as safe as possible, what do you think the rest of society is going to do with that child in giving it the proper nurturing and opportunity and development it might need? You're absolutely right about that, Pete. I know that this is a hot issue. We often complain about law enforcement and their involvement with folks for minor traffic infractions, but the safety of kids is paramount, Pete. And I applaud you for highlighting that. You don't sound that too old to me, bringing that up. But we definitely need to, for these young mothers. It's on us older folks to set an example, to encourage them in the right direction and to correct them when they're in the wrong direction. So This is and this is low hanging fruit. This is easy. You know, a mother's job just keep the child safe, and then we can start working on giving them a proper education and all the other things they need to develop into being productive citizens. So I applaud you for bringing that up, Pete,
Okay.
because it's definitely something that we need to be aware of. Now, uh, uh, you know, on my end, I had a rough week, Pete. I'm gonna tell you why I had a rough week, everybody. My wife escaped to St. Thomas for a week with her girlfriends. Um, about five, six of them, they took off, and so Pete, all this week I've been a single parent, doing all the stuff us single parents do. You know, the cooking, the cleaning, the picking up, the dropping off, the going to school events. And my kids they're big kids. It was a lot of work, so I applaud all those ladies out there who do this every day in and day out, taking care of their families. And for the brothers, listen, if you can do a little extra for the ladies, this is a great time to do. I know it's not Valentine's Day. We do have Mother's Day coming up, but on the day in day out basis, we could just do a little bit more to help them out. I think it'll go a long way, Pete. Cause man, it was rough over here uh, all this week. I also happen to see her back. I know she didn't bring it back. She didn't bring a penny back. So, all right, Pete, let's jump. Look, this is a good week. We finally got Biden to give a major address to Congress. I came in a joint session of Congress, um, and it was just interesting. Somebody said to me, "Well, that was pretty boring." I said it wasn't boring. It was predictable, but you didn't have to worry about the building being set on fire or something. Because he got up there, he said what he had to say. I think he stayed on script. He may have bobbled one or two words here and there. Uh, but I'd like to get your impressions of his. We'll talk about the substance later.
Well,
What was your impression of his performance in delivering that speech?
listen, I told people from the beginning, Biden is in the nature of conservatism, Biden would be a conservative Democrat and a moderate Republican. He represents the old and the new as far as voters and enrichment of influence go, or whether you're in the black community, Latino community, whatever. What I mean by that, most of the country is just right of center. He's always been like that. So that's what he's gonna stick to. So I listened to the speech. I looked at the details of it. They put out a summary of it before we go live with it, and it was okay. But as I remind people, it's the sum total of all the parts that count. My first grade and the elementary school teachers used to tell you it's the sum total of all the parts. I give you an example. One of the tricks I use on kids, and this applies to politics right now. You ask a kid now in elementary school, particularly, or even some in high school, you say, "What is two and two?" First thing they're going to say is four. But really, two and two equals 22 because you didn't say two plus two. You just said two and two. You feel me? So that's a joke. That's how I find out if they say I've got a 7-point weighted grade average and all like that. I say, okay, well, answer this simple question for me. I said, well, just tell me what is two and two. And they say, four. I said, really? You sure about that? And then they have to think about it. So that's where I look at. That's where I look at all that stuff with those guys. What's got to? As I told you last week, Clint, we're headed in a collision course. We got two factions that want to create a race war. We got one faction that wants to create right after post Reconstruction versus a major part of the country and the extreme right wing of the Republican Party want us to go to like a American neo-Nazi style thing, and then we got the extreme left who wants to they can't figure out what they want to do. So those of us in the middle, we're gonna have to come together: independents, Republicans, the Democrats, uh, whatever the case may be. So with Biden, it is what it is with him. Actually, if you look at his history, Biden has a combination of Joe Manchin and probably, I wouldn't say Dick Durbin, but Biden represents a combination of Joe Manchin and, to an extent, the black female senator who we forget sometimes. She was a firebrand, but she also has some conservative traits. That was Carol Moseley Braun from Illinois. So I leave it at that.
Now, okay, so let's talk about what was in the speech a little bit. He proposed spending, I think the price tag is about $4 trillion. That was a number, I think, if I recall correctly. $4 trillion for all the spending that he proposed. As a Republican, Pete, how alarming is it to you? And I think the methodology for paying for that was, of course, raising corporate taxes, raising individual taxes. What'd you take of that concept of the dollar amount and paying for it by raising taxes in those two entities?
Number one, if it was Trump saying the same thing, it would have passed immediately. That's just the politics of it. I'm just being frank. When you look at the proposal itself, a lot of people think that it should be broken up into two parts. Because when you look at the main definition of infrastructure, I mean, we go down streets every day, bad streets, bad sewage, a lot of infrastructure improvements, particularly in black and brown communities and even poor rural communities we need. When you think about infrastructure that he talks about, it's amazing in this country that almost over half of the country don't have internet. Really? So you look at that part. Then he separates the other part with the climate control and daycare and the whole bit. Now, he was smart enough to split it up, because what he's going to have to do in these first 2 years is get all he can. And that's the one thing that I blame Obama for, really. He did not even check out the people that supposedly supported him by trying to get all he could the first 2 years when the Democrats was in control of everything. They could have told him to go to hell or whatever, but he never tried it. And so what happened?
That was probably the biggest reflection of his inexperience and costliness with the power he has. But we've got an old guy that's been in the Senate for a long time. He's seen a lot of presidents come and go, and he sees the moment. The price tag, I thought, it's what, like I said, you go to the store and want to get some eggs and milk. I think it's the price of what it costs to get what you want. But we've got to have those things. America's growing and expanding. We no longer have the major water projects or major transportation projects. And then the old infrastructure is being left alone to the states and to the counties to kind of address. I think we need some big and what he called bold and daring ideas to get this country back to a place where it can be prepared for the growth that's going to come in the future. Now,
if you look at a lot of the companies that don't pay no taxes, Clint, these are some of the same companies that say Black Lives Matter and we're going to do this and all like that.
Yeah,
but that's fake. Absolutely. That's fake, right? The company is fake with them. See, one thing about even an extreme Republican or an extremist that hides under the Republican label, they straight up with what they believe in. They just straight with it, or straight eight, whatever the kids say on Instagram now. And so what's happening is, when he talks about taxing, an increase of taxing people that make over $450,000 a year, that's fine. Everybody knows, including Joe Manchin, says, hey, we can accept the corporate tax rate of 25%. Excuse me, that's no problem either. But what they're not telling the public is that a lot of those companies aren't going to really pay that amount because they're not paying taxes now. No. So if you say, here's my thought if I was Biden or Trump, I would say, look, you guys and ladies aren't paying taxes as you should anyway. I tell you what, if you want to try to get away with doing that, then take the money that you're not paying the government and go into partnership with local groups, nonprofit and all, and build more affordable housing, more things with education and daycare and the whole bit. And then you can get the same tax credit and you won't look bad by just having everything all short, and then you see the big
Now,
IBM paid no money.
okay, Pete, you going too far because now you're talking about people actually in these companies proving their commitment. And it's easy to print a slogan or wear a T-shirt or raise your fist in the air. When the rubber hits the road, is where do you put your money and what do you do to change the things that are really affecting people? Let me ask you this about the speech. So the price tag was one thing. One of the other things I was looking for in the speech was the how far he went to try to bring people together or unify the country. And I don't know that I heard much really on that point. Now I'm gonna tell you right now, if you listen to the show for a long time, Pete, I have what I call setup questions. This is a setup question for my Republican friends. So my question was, did you find that he did enough to try to unify the country, or is that even relevant for him to try and do?
Well, here's what I thought. He said enough to have people think he was trying to unify the company. But people have to
Okay.
remember that Joe Biden himself, from where his days was real tough on crime and all like that, he has not, even though he was with the Obama administration 8 years to make a difference there, he has not, in my opinion, totally evolved, I would say, to unify the country. Because one of the problems he is having, he has to find a way to get. I gave a perfect comment when he said that we're not a racist country, but we got racial issues. What he didn't say is that on the surface now, and really has bubbled up beyond the surface, we have a significant part of the white community is turning things that make us look more racist than what we are. Now, had he said that in the speech, that would have opened up some honesty in people. See, it's like the old days. Our parents would say, "Okay, you know what? You keep messing around, we're gonna have a come to Jesus meeting." But so he
Uh,
doesn't have that. He's not going to do that. People got to understand two things Joe Biden is not going to do. One, he's not going to have that honest, upfront, call it like you see it conversation. And number two, he's banking on 8 years. So if you think he's helping Kamala to be the next president after him, his 4 years, that's not going to happen either. So he's just doing things to um, get through what he thinks he needs to do to keep the lid from blowing off. But it's too late for that. And in fact, I saw a couple of instances this week where things are getting so bad. Guess what's coming into play now, Clint? When he's
what's
talking
that?
about bringing a racial thing, what's coming into play now? The hatred for interracial couples again. Can you believe that?
Well, they can
Well,
keep that. But let me
but
ask
I'm
you
just
this
saying.
though, because in that unifying component, so people point out to me and a couple of my friends around said, look, why can't he get bipartisan support like Trump did for the previous bills that were passed to address COVID? And let me tell you, and here's my theory on that. Um, I think Democratic voters are more tolerant of Democrats going along with Republican ideas when the writing's on the wall. Because the Republicans are going to pass something. The question was whether or not the Democrats were able to get enough out of it um, that they wanted. I think that the Republican base will not allow Republicans to work with Joe Biden. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, if you look at the base that's set up under the Trump image, why should they? It's to their political advantage to go along with all these false theories and everything that's fake, the whole shenanigans. So it's not playing to the strength. And remember what I told you last week, and I told our listening audience here on straight up the middle, is that a lot of Republicans who Biden could peel off are independents now. So you got to get them back into a coalition fold. But I don't, this country is headed Really, we got some real serious problems. You see it every
Hold on,
day.
let me ask you about that, because you said this several times. There are these independents. Okay, Trump got what, 74 million votes. If I got it right.
Mm-hmm.
Biden got about 78 million, somewhere in that range. So my question I'm trying to figure out is how many of Biden's 78 million were swing votes?
Quite. It's no
Well, that's
different.
all about, but it's, I mean, if you take that after what, 4 million, 5 million, that doesn't seem like a very big swing pot to be moving around.
It's enough. I give you a local example of that for those who are into algorithms and all that kind of stuff. You know what's a big you know what's a local example to look at that, Clint? The Gillum DeSantis race.
Okay.
You know what helped DeSantis win? Black women. Who would have thought that percentage would have been
that's on the school
high?
choice? But that was the best. But even in that number, it was a small margin.
Well,
very small margin. I just don't know. I don't know, Pete, that you got that many swing voters out there.
And here's the other thing: you have voters. If you look at the number of people who, even though this was the largest election on, look at the number. They broke down the number of people who normally would have voted that didn't vote. Small as the percentage they may be, it makes a difference in a race. And I tell people, I go back all the time that every vote counts. Locally, 1 or 2 votes made the difference between Reuben Paget and Perry Harvey being our first.
Yeah, okay, but let's take this. Let's look at this presidential vote. You had more people vote in this election than ever. Trump got more Republican votes than anybody, and Biden got more votes than anybody, ever as well. So I thought this election was a larger, more people participated in this election than stayed home. And I'm trying to figure out where these independents swinging from.
Well, you're going to see them in the next election for sure.
Hold on, Pete. Well, let me say this. I think they're more apathetic voters that you can motivate to vote versus not vote than votes people that'll swing. And I'm just trying to figure out if that's the case, if what my theory is, Republicans base won't let Republicans work with Democrats, why do we need to waste our time? Biden does, trying to get them on board. Why not go ahead and pass his bill through reunification and call it a day?
It's simple. Every Democrat on paper is not necessarily a Democrat as far as doing what's right. See, we get we get this thing that everything is monolithic, that every Democrat is a progressive and liberal. Listen, you don't have it. You got some conservative Democrats that's probably more extreme right wing than Republican extremists. They just go under the Democratic label. So you're gonna, the key measurement of it, I guess, if you remember, we used to take those social statistic classes in college we thought was a soft elective, and it turned out hell on water. Here's the thing. The true measurement of it is the upcoming 2022 elections. And when you talk among people that voted in the presidential election, they're not even thinking about the 2022 election. So there you have it with that.
All right. So also Biden threw into his big spiel a lot of programs that had an FDR feel to them. Is he trying in this speech is he trying to be the modern day FDR? And if so, is it set for him to do so? And here's why I think that's the case. First, I hate to say it, but it is what it is. He's old, he's white, he has a majority in the Senate and the House. And he knows that this is the moment that he has to seize to get the most stuff passed as possible. Because he can't predict what happens in midterms. And often at the midterms, you lose a little bit. But is he trying to mirror an FDR type transformation of American society?
FDR was a hell of a racist. So I think Biden is really just trying to stay balanced. The basic things that he talked about that similar to FDR, we do need to improve our education system, our infrastructure, affordable housing, things like that. But outside of that, I'm telling you, all those guys are basically, Biden is old, yes. Now he may be trying to reconcile some of the mistakes he made in the past so that he can get more forgiveness as he wander off to heaven in the future. That may be it. But otherwise than that, you're not going to see too many changes, because if I'm in their shoes, I know doggone well already that in 2022 and coming back in 2024, all the hype with Black Lives Matter, all the hype about poor people this, all the George Floyd stuff and all like that, is going to be a history footnote. So you do just enough to get by this and everybody forget it, and then you go on about your business. You know, it's like smoking a regular Dominican cigar and a Black and Mild stuff with some natural medical marijuana. I'm just saying. That's me now.
Where
I'm
you
just
keep
saying.
that? You sit up at night writing this stuff? Oh, you
No,
got
I
a
keep
list?
it real, Clint. You know I keep it real, and I can't wait till we talk about Tim Scott. But I keep it real. What you see with me is what you get. Now, it cost me some dates, but that's okay. I save money. You see what I'm saying? So,
Man, you are too much. Listen though. Okay, so I just think this. I think Biden, you know, and I put aside the racist piece. Let's put that aside. Uh, you know, because the hardcore racists, they're often these little crazy pockets. I think most of us are just victims of our life experience, and we may have preferences one way or the other way. But the hardcore people that want people to die and, you know, want to run them over with their car because they look different and all those kind of people. Those I think we have less of those people around, and even though we have people riling them up so that they'll charge the Capitol, I'm not as concerned about that group. But when I look at Trump, at Biden, I see such an opportunity, and he is doing just enough to try to entice Republicans to work with him to appease Joe Manchin. He wants to be able to go to Joe and say, "Listen, Joe, we tried. We gave him opportunities to get involved, to be a part of this, but this train is going to move forward." And he's going to box Joe Manchin in a corner, because here's what you don't hear out of Joe Manchin, and we can deal with him on another day. He's not coming forward and explaining what Republicans are willing to work with Joe Biden or how they'll work with Joe Biden. He's just standing there stomping his foot saying he thinks it should be the case that they come along and work with Republicans, but we're not seeing any real effort from him. And trust me, I don't think the Republican base, from what some of the stuff they're doing in these legislatures around the country and bills they're passing, will tolerate that. Now, you done teased the second subject that we got to talk about. We have got to talk about Tim Scott's response. So what we're going to do, if you don't mind, Pete, on the other side of the break, we come back, we're going to break apart the response from Tim Scott himself, and let's talk a little bit about how us Black folks are handling each other. Because sometimes we don't really think about that as much, how damaging and how hurtful, how impactful what we do are. So let's do that. So let's take a quick break. We're going to take it and run a couple commercials, come back on the other side. This is In Touch News Radio, reality radio. Everybody can be a star. We'll be right back.
By now, we're all aware of the dangers of COVID-19. Like others with existing health issues, cancer patients are at a high risk due to their compromised condition. If you are newly diagnosed with cancer, your care likely can't wait. Moffitt Cancer Center is the best place for your cancer concerns and to provide guidance to help you plan your next steps. We're here for you. Call 1-888-456-2839 or go to moffitt.org/here for you.
Welcome to Calvin's Barbershop.
You all got to see this.
I don't even want to know what you're looking at on that phone.
Well, you should. I was learning about the dangers of high blood pressure and that we need to get ours checked regularly. High blood pressure can increase the risk of heart attack or stroke, but this text program can help keep it at a healthy range. Just text Barbershop to 97779 to sign up.
I'll get right on it as soon as I'm done with this baby panda video.
Text Barbershop to 97779. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
It's important to plan ahead for emergencies, like the storm. When it kicked in, we had a plan. We were able to get in touch with each other in no time.
Idea how to find each other.
The whole experience was
the
fine.
most frightening 10 hours of my life.
If there's one piece of advice I'd offer other moms out there, it's to stay calm and keep to the plan.
Some parents plan ahead, some don't. Make sure you know where to find your family in an emergency. Start your plan at ready.gov. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
All right, back on InTouch News Radio, reality radio where everybody can be a star. My name is Clinton Paris, and I'm the co-host of Straight Up the Middle. I'm joined by the best co-host in America, none other than Sweet Pete Edwards. Good morning to you again, Pete. How you feeling? Listen, well, thank you, Pete. Listen, I get all messages all the way. They say, man, why you taking so easy on Pete? You beat the professor into him. You beat him off the show, and now you got Pete up there. You want to try that stuff with Pete? Did you try the professor? Well, Pete, you would bring such a wealth of knowledge to this show. I think across America, we don't appreciate a lot of folks like you who've done a lot of hard work for decades and decades, incrementally moving our society forward. And it is I'm just elated to have you on the show with me in the morning. I really, really respect your opinion and what you've done in our community. And, to sit here on this show on Saturday mornings and talk to you. I mean, I know we could be sitting on anybody's back porch or front porch or on a park bench, just having a great conversation. And I really, really thank you for joining us and the way you do.
There's work to do in our community. And we have to remind people, Clint, as I said before, it's the sum total of all the parts. My great-grandmother, at first I couldn't figure it out when she used to have me sit by her side and she watched that Emerson black and white TV and all them soap operas with no black people on it a whole bit. But she would also teach me basic things, that understanding when she watched the TV, she have a thimble on her thumb and a needle and sew up socks that we should have got new ones for. And she would always talk about, if you want to get strong, you got to have something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue. Mm-hmm. And so as the kids grew better, we learned how to put patches behind those jeans that they charge $100 for now. You know what I mean? So that's how it is with the black community. All of us play a part. At the end of the day, when you have your family come to Jesus meeting, when dad have their one-on-one conversations with their sons, at the end of the day, we want to strive to come out stronger. Because
and I think that it is simple things. And I'm gonna get right before we talk about Tim Scott. I got a message this morning from my nephew. He may be, I think, about mid-30s. And he sent out a family challenge to do 30 days, no fried food, no added sugar, no complex carbohydrates. And, so we're probably going to do that. But I just thought, wow, that's just interesting. Here's a young person in my family doing something very minor that may help people get to be a little bit healthier. And there's so many things people can do. Everybody doesn't have to set out to be Martin Luther King or Jesse Jackson or Barack Obama. You can do incremental things wherever you are that can really make a difference. All right, I know you've been itching to talk about Tim Scott. Oh, so they rolled Tim out. And my first thought was why they rolled Tim out in this hot, charged environment. That was my first thought, and I've been hearing his name lately being bantered about. it was kind of like, what was the guy's name, Pete, in my mind, that they put in charge of the DNC, the Republican National Committee when
Steele,
Obama
Michael Steele.
Michael Steele. They threw Michael Steele in there to figure, okay, if a black person says these things, they can't be all bad. So let me ask you off the top, what do you think of his performance in that moment of giving that speech?
It was expected. See, where I think in the black community where we go off track a lot, we have to look at a guy like Tim Scott. We have to go back and look how he got to be senator. He had one of the most conservative white folk senators, I believe Jim DeMint, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Okay? Set him up to be senator of all places, South Carolina, which they have a high percentage of black population. You know, in Columbia and Orangeburg, South Carolina, those are predominantly black cities. And so
yes,
that's the first thing. Number two, they knew what a lot of us should pay attention to, that Scott wants to make money. Okay? And what I mean by this, he says he wants to do one more term. Well, he's up for 2022. So he's not going to do anything that's going to cost him votes. And what do I mean by that? If he do too much that's what's right, he'll have strong primary opposition, and Trump may switch out on him and recruit somebody to run against him in the Republican primary. So he doesn't want that. He knows if he comes out too strong in what's right, he's going to lose white votes, and he won't, even if he didn't have Republican primary opposition, he's not going to pick up black voters just because he's a black Republican senator from South Carolina. The other thing, when I talk about money, all these guys, black and white, all of them, they look to how they can benefit from the political system once they get out of office. So that's another thing. And he proved that where in Clarence Thomas, he's the Clarence Thomas of elected officials, like the Clarence Thomas. I'm serious.
Stop it. I'm not gonna let you put this man in the category of Clarence Thomas. So
what did he say? I've been a victim of racial profiling and the whole bit. Okay, look at his elected official. He's been a House of Representatives guy the whole bit, and he's been a senator almost for 6 years. Name one. Look at what he's against. He's against from changing the qualified immunity. He has not come out at not one time, and say, hey, we need to crack down on police misconduct, and I've seen it myself. I've even been stopped in the halls of Congress. He hadn't come out with that. And here's two things that he has not done that shows you why they put him out there. Name me one time, and that's why I say the parties have people of all stripes and all. In the black community, we're not monolithic. Trump, his type man, made all those judicial appointments. Tim Scott couldn't even get him to appoint a black lawyer to be a judge in South Carolina. Now you figure, okay? He didn't even push for a diversity in the appointment of black judges, Trump judges, including some blacks, although they may not belong to the Federalist Society. They're as conservative as some of the judges Trump appointed, because when you talk about the law, you know, Clint, they go by the rule of law and what's on the law book versus what you think. Now, the other thing that made me cringe and knew he was fake, and you're not going to see no more out of him, not one time in his career has he pushed for formulas or whatever to bring about the betterment of affordable housing, and particularly affordable housing in the suburban areas. So when you look at a guy like Trent Scott, he's in it for him and the money. And
now,
they all do that. They all do that.
Here's how I knew he was in it for the money. He promptly went on Sean Hannity and gave out his web address so people could donate money. That was the thing he told me. That was the, because here's one of the things I'm trying to do, Pete, and you can help me with this. I'm trying to be tolerant of people thinking and seeing things different than I see them, and dismissing that out of hand. I don't know that he's any different than the modern day J.C. Watts or some of the other folks that have come along on the Republican side that out of hand they've been bashed for having a Condoleezza Rice would be another one that comes to mind, who had a approach politics from a different angle than what I would want it to be. So I want to give him some space, but I know that he was put up there specifically because we're in a very charged environment. Majority of white America is under a lot of criticism for a lot of systemic racist things that have gone on forever. And this applies to Democrats as well that have not been, we've done a lot of stuff. My presence in position in society reflects that, but still there are too many people that don't have a remote chance or at an opportunity of the qualities of life that they deserve because of systemic things that limit their opportunities. And so when this guy comes out and he then espouses and gives, I would like a better word, gives cover for the people that are maintaining some of that stuff. That was the stuff that was disingenuous to me.
Here's the thing: if you and I are teaching Afro-American studies, okay, or we're teaching political science, one of the courses that I would teach or would give an assignment to my students would be, I want you to do a comparison of whatever contrast of Senator Edward Brooke versus Senator Tim Scott. Now, Edward Brooke was a black senator that came out of Massachusetts, basically out of Boston. Boston is a tough city for people of color and black, okay? So when you're teaching young students and young adults about politicalness and local politics and even nationwide, whatever in the political science concept, and then you talk about Afro-American studies, that would be an interesting theme, a term paper to do. All right, young blood, you think you got it like that, and OG is, I'm an old head or OG or whatever. Do me a term paper on the contrast and everything between Senator Ed Brooke and Senator Tim Scott. And that would make them do research and all and look at their backgrounds, how they came to be senators and all like that, and see what you get. And what as a professor, what I would envision was the student coming back to me with his eyes wide open or her eyes wide open and say, hey, not only were they both black males and black men, and they did some things similar in politics, but this is where they ventured off. And that's how you compare apples to apples. And I would make the student look at when Ed Brooke was in office and compare the times of the country and where Ed Brooke come from in relationship to Tim Scott in South Carolina and the times of the country now. Tim Scott designed himself not to cause trouble for anybody. And I told you, I recognized it when I went back and did research and found out that this guy has never really pushed for anything that would bring about fairness. How do you appoint all these judicial judges and you only get, I think Trump appointed only 2 black? Really? And none in South Carolina, where you and your cut buddy Lindsey Graham are supposed to be so tight, and you don't even put a black judge in South Carolina, and I think they had about 4 or 5 open. So that's what I look at, the work and all. And he doesn't care whether they call him Uncle Tim or not, because we not gonna give him money.
Hold on to the Uncle Tim. But let me ask you this though. I thought he went out his way to say America is not racist. That has no bearing on a lot of the political things that Joe Biden put out per se. There are a lot of things that Joe Biden put out would lift everybody, that everybody would benefit from. They were not nearly as targeted in that. Why do you think he went out his way to add that line into his speech, that America's not racist?
He had no choice. It's the survival of the fittest. What is he trying to do? He is trying to survive 2022. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line straight up front. He is trying to stave off opposition and all. If he gets elected again in 2022, and he talks about that's his last term. Once he's sworn in for that final term, then he may come out and say, you know what? I reevaluated everything, and we're getting more racist than what I thought. Why? Because he don't have nothing to lose anymore. And if he doesn't make money with Fox after he come off the Senate, then he can make it with MSNBC like Michael Steele. So you gotta see, we gotta get out of this color thing so much, because at the end of the day, you got people that love power, they love money, and they love sex. That's the bottom line.
Well, now you talking about Gates, and we're gonna leave him where he's at for a minute. I was struck by, because it felt out of place, that comment. And we've often had, here's a guy, let me just say this. He recounts how he's had to deal with issues because of his race, being followed, being stopped, things of that nature. And then he went out his way, though. He could leave it where it was and talk about America not being racist. So of course the next day, that's what you hear being bantered around. Everybody's been asked, is America a racist country? Now, the also thing that you got drummed up real quick, and you just hit on it, was the Uncle Tom reference and calling him Uncle Tim. Check this out, Pete. Years ago, my family and I, my wife's a Jack and Jill member, and Jack and Jill, we went on a trip to Detroit, retracing the Underground Railroad back through Detroit and into Canada. And we went to a reunion of descendants of escaped slaves in Canada. They had a reunion, and we went to the event, part of that event. But on that trip, we went to visit the Uncle Tom's Museum in Canada. And so we were having jokes saying, listen, there won't be any timing on this trip. We all fired up about our blackness. Why are we going to an Uncle Tom Museum? Well, it's really the Uncle Tom and Elijah Henson Heritage Museum, or whatever it is. End of the day, it was a story. It was about Uncle Tom and how when he got to Canada, he helped free other slaves. He escaped to Canada is what he did. Helped to free other slaves, built a school for blacks, helped blacks buy property. It really contradicts the image we have of Uncle Tom in America based on the book. And my question for you is, what was your take of that response to him and people calling him Uncle Tom, Uncle Tim, he's cooning? What was your take on that?
Well, if you don't study your history, then it could be Bush League, okay? And then when you look at it, people have a right to say what they want to say. That's the way it is in this country. Now, here's the thing. For him, he would have a fallback on something to fight about, that he's been falsely accused of being Uncle Tim or Uncle Tom. But he has no track record. What could he show? When he talks
what about that police reform bill last year that got filibustered?
That was a fake police reform bill. When he never agreed, he had to be forced to agree to ban chokeholds. But one of the key component about the police reform bill that died last year, they didn't want to remove qualified immunity. Now, here's where you're going to find out whether Tim's really got power or not. His counterpart, Lindsey Graham, came out and said, hey, with this new action now, maybe we could modify qualified immunity. Listen to what he said. He said, I disagree with suing the officer, but I would agree with a police reform where we sue the police department. Because the logic is that it's not the police department's fault, it's the police officer's fault, it's the police department's fault for the training. So
not rid of this person who's a bad apple.
Yeah. So you get that. But Tim Scott, there are a lot of, in some ways, you or I could be called an Uncle Tim. And I tell you why. Because if the populace don't see us with a soundbite and a photo op all the time of what we do, then they assume that, number one, we do nothing. Number two, we sell out our community. Number 3 was just about us. And they don't even think about we have any restless nights or whatever representing our constituency, your clients, the whole bit. Am I right or wrong about that?
No, listen.
I'm just saying.
People the craziest things to me about my life experience, which they don't know. They're presumptive about it. You're right about that, and that goes into how we treat each other as it relates to race. I was bothered that he was attacked. Some of the racially charged comments about him, because I just don't like people talking to people in that kind of line, and particularly within our community to each other, even if we disagree. What are your thoughts about how black folks treat other black folks?
Should he not expected that, Clint? Should he not expected that? You see, when you serve
that doesn't make it right. So expected, but that doesn't make it right.
No, but when you serve the public, or when you in the public light, you gotta have a strong constitution. You gotta have strong faith. You gotta have patience. You gotta have perseverance, and you gotta have a high degree of tolerance. Because when you're in the public situation like that, that comes with the territory, and that's why you have the inside-outside effect. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is how can I strengthen my community? I knew a detective with the police department. He was a pain in the butt. We used to make it clear all the time about he didn't want his daughters to marry a black guy. You know what I used to tell him? I don't give a rat's butt about what you think. We got a couple of kids here. We got a couple of adults here. You need to take a look at this case again. You overcharge him or whatever the case may be. He's eligible or she's eligible for trial. And look, at the end of the day, whether you and I like them to marry each other or not, one way or the other, if they want to find a way to marry each other, they're going to do that. And you know what my goal was? To put pressure on him to say, hey, this is a bad case. This is a bad charge or whatever. Why? I'm not thinking on the negative back because he don't like Negroes or whatever, because he would always use the word Negro. But if it made a difference in keeping 3 of my kids from going to prison, bound over for adult court and all like that, I had to take that in order to save our kids. You know why? Because I want them, as I step aside or as I'm pushed aside if I'm not doing right for their benefit in the future, to take over and be leaders in my community. Now, at the end of the day, people don't like that, but it's an inside-outside wash.
No, you're right about that. Listen, though, as always, I want to. DJ Anna has done an outstanding job back in the studio. She has given me the high sign that I only have 3 minutes, which really means I probably have 5. But she's trying to apply a Jedi mind trick on me so that I'll get out on time, Pete. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you give me. What are your thoughts, and what should we be looking for happening next week?
Hey, what we better look for in a hurry, and it's our fault. The community at large, and particularly the black community. Where are we going with Hillsborough County Schools with this funding and the closure of schools and all? Prior to the pandemic, they were going to turn over Oak Park and Stephen Foster schools to private charter schools because of the continuing D and F thing. So I think they may get a second chance. But I wish our community would stop playing games. We got a lot of people who are retired, a lot of people who don't work because their husband or wife take care of them, and that's a good thing when your wife take care of you. I'm just throwing that out as a joke, women. Don't get mad. Don't get mad. But anyway, we keep ignoring this local education problem. We got a real problem, a real deficit. Bad schools continue to be bad schools and the whole bit. So I'm hoping locally, you know what? Stop waiting till after the fact. I think our community would be stronger if we pay attention to stuff all the time as if we were voting for Obama the first time. And when you do that, you make a difference. When you wait till after the fact, if I'm a white elected official, first thing I'm going to say, well, where was you in the beginning? And then the second thing I'm going to say is, well, you can have your photo op moment and your sound bite, but guess what? I'm going to be elected again in spite of it because you didn't really vote for me in the beginning because I never heard from you on constituency issues. And I'm talking about elected officials that's not normally representing the black community. You feel me on that? And Anna treats you nice and she keeps me in line. But I like her for that.
All right, so I want to thank Pete always for sitting in with me and providing some insightful comments that people can really think about and take to heart. I want to thank DJ Anna back in studio for holding down the boards and making sure Pete and I sound, our sultry voices sound so good. Also want to invite everybody to stick around on In-Touch News for the sole purpose, which follows the show. You've been listening to In-Touch News Radio, reality radio where everybody could be a star. We'll see you back here again next week. Everybody be safe.
Touch Radio, the most loved station across the nation. In Touch Radio. Tell a friend. In Touch Radio.
Hey, this is Agent Wright, better known as Mr. Clean. You looking for some great barbecue? Come see them two brothers in the grill, located at 423 Virginia Street, Charleston, West Virginia. We got ribs, chicken, pulled pork, brisket, collard greens, mac and cheese, baby. Come get some and get you a nice, smooth cigar. 304-550-4431. That is 304-550-4431. Come get some, baby. The Rib Man, mama, the Rib Man.
It may be hard to believe, but people just like you are already saving money. FeedThePig.org makes it easy. Their simple savings plan teaches you how to start saving without going overboard, so you don't need to start foraging wild berries.
I was skeptical, but these